This is Metabolic Radio, the podcast dedicated to keeping you informed when it comes to everything fitness. My name is Taylor Empey, and with the help of my co-host Shane Pace, we aim to expose the truths about the health and fitness industry. The information and suggestions given in this podcast should not be considered as clinical or medical advice. Consult with a physician before implementing any information provided on this podcast. So I think there's another topic that people should be informed about.
Am I going to be aggressive about this one?
No, I don't think so.
All right.
No, it's actually not. This one's not as. This is not a controversial episode.
Well, neither was the last one.
Sure, it was.
It became controversial.
No, the
more so.
The importance of getting physical screenings and blood work. Something I've noticed since becoming a personal trainer is people neglect their health quite a bit. And I know that sounds like a duh statement, but like the average person that I see, the last time they got a physical with any type of blood work, done at all to check the status of their health was like 5 or 6 years.
If ever.
Yeah. And this is something that I think we've talked about this briefly in a past episode, but I want to actually tell people kind of which specific tests to request on blood work. But I feel like it's a weird thing to neglect when a lot of your health insurance will cover most of it,
makes
if
sense.
not all of it,
that makes
depending
sense.
on what you run.
The funny thing is when we were talking before about preventative, this is preventative.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
That's why that's how it's treated, and that's why I recommend it for people. And if you're, with things like diabetes and obesity and other chronic metabolic related conditions,
you're totally
cardiovascular
disease.
This. No, you're not going to do it. You're not going to do it. But because of those things and like cardiovascular disease in there as well, they're perfectly preventable diseases. But people don't check their health. They don't do these milestone checks that are, covered, and they're paying for them anyway through health insurance premiums.
They aren't necessarily preventable, but they're definitely treatable to a large extent. I think some of them are
You don't think type 2 diabetes is preventable?
Of course I do, but that's not what I mean. I think that like a lot of the child-based ones, it's hard to see that. But no.
What do you mean?
Your point is valid. It's hard because you're not going to get blood panels done on a kid, and the next factor is they turn into
but it doesn't mean it's not preventable. I'm saying,
no, and it is preventable.
Lifestyle, it's lifestyle that determines whether that's preventable or not. The blood work is a measure to check.
I think there's some things that are outside the realm, but I think that's few and far between. I think we agree on that anyway.
Well, metabolic conditions are, for the most part, preventable.
I think so too. Yeah. Overall, I agree with that.
But so
I could be the voice of unreason, though, if you'd like. I'm willing to take the absolutely wrong side of this discussion, even though
you're going to take a subject that doesn't have to be an argument, and you're going to turn it into an argument.
I might, just for fun. Nah, the odds are against it because we both agree with this is good. But
so the things I typically recommend, I want to give people a list so that they actually next time they go do a physical, and I recommend you actually go do that. Like if you haven't gotten a physical done within the last 12 months. And legally now we all have to have health insurance. Your health insurance is going to cover at least part of that, and it's probably some blood panels, some of which we're going to talk about. So go schedule that. Go check your actual health status. Take the time to invest in yourself and your preventative health, like you invest in any other endeavor that you do. Because
we both,
like I said, people don't do that.
We both believe in preventative stuff, and this is definitely preventative.
Yeah, in fact, I will say this right now. There was a client that I was working with. We're not working together anymore due to the fact that I referred her to another professional that probably is more qualified to help her nutritionally speaking. We started working together. We worked together for about 6 months, and she has severe metabolic damage.
Gotcha.
And struggled with even resetting the metabolism. We got to the point where I identified that was the case, and that she had metabolic damage because of some things she had told me about past blood panels she had run.
Gotcha.
And with things like,
which there is a good way to that's one of the best ways to read it, actually.
Well, yeah, I mean there was a lot of factors going on. There was family emergencies and things that took place, and stressors, life stress, high cortisol. I think thyroid issues were related. Hormone panels were pretty off, pretty weird, and we were trying to narrow things down to see, okay, what's going to be the best approach, and so we were working on like stress reduction and just decreasing intensity in the workouts and just having her do a lot less intense, a lot less aerobic, more just focusing on building a healthy metabolism back up. Still struggling, and I asked somebody who also has a trainer for some insight, and I said, they're eliciting these symptoms. What do you think this could be? Help me look at this objectively. And immediately they were like, she's pre-diabetic because of some other symptoms that she was eliciting. And I said, you know what? Okay, let's go have you get blood work done specifically for that, and especially like fasted glucose and things like that. It's what she hadn't got on previous panels. Come to find out, they pretty much said, yeah, you're not quite technically pre-diabetic, but you're going that way. And that's a major contributor as a result of certain lifestyle things. And that's totally preventable if you identify it.
For sure.
And so I think that's why it's really important that people can understand that's totally in their power.
No, right. And in considering the last discussion that we aired, I could side note at this point, because this is something that is a touchy topic to me, but having an understanding so that you know where to kind of step back and fix, I think is a big deal. And I think the only way you can do that really effectively, truly effectively, is by blood panels, because then you can actually see what's going on.
You can really see what's truly going on inside your body
on a hormonal basis. Yeah. And I think, like I said, we could easily change this, or when I say I could easily change this discussion, because this is a topic that really is to me is a big focal point to what the real problem is with obesity. But that being said, I think blood panels, again, Taylor and I talked about this before we aired this for real, and I'm a big believer that blood panels, even though I really don't get them done.
Why is that?
Just never have.
Why?
Just never have. It's just never crossed my mind to do it.
But you know the importance of it. So that's what I'm saying.
No.
It's deeper than just no.
You're right. At this point, you're right. Because if you'd have talked to me 2 years ago and said that I should get blood panels, I'd have been like, you're crazy. But I've done a lot more research on my own and towards hormonal stuff. Mm-hmm. And because of it, it's made me want to understand the effects that a true good blood panel is going to bring, that you got to be able to understand to get from a blood panel, if that makes sense. But have I done it still? No, I still haven't done it.
You should.
At this point, it's probably laziness.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yeah. Thanks for the kid.
So, which it kind of sounds like that's the case with a lot of other people.
No, I think so too.
It's out of sight, out of mind. I got this thing in front of me right now that's more important. I can do that later, or doesn't ever cross their mind because they don't realize how impactful it can be.
Well, it's like I said, dude. 2 years ago, if you'd have brought it up and I was lifting then, I'd come back and started lifting again. So I'd been doing it for quite a while at that point. In fact, I'd been back training people at that point. And I probably would have been like, there's no reason to do that. I don't see any reason to do that because I'm going to control the factors behind it. I don't need to go in and get it checked because I have an idea. But the reality is you really don't know until you get something checked.
Well, yeah, and there's things that can be wrong that you don't feel are wrong.
For sure.
And that are going on in your body. So that's why it's usually good. So getting into the exact panels to get run. Now, here's the thing. It's all going to depend on your insurance, and the doctor isn't going to know exactly what's going to be
So
covered.
you want to
Your
check
insurance
that.
company's
Makes
going to know.
sense.
So people don't just go into the doctor and ask for all these tests, because you could be stuck with a multi-$100 bill if you're not careful. So probably potentially thousands of dollars, depending on what you decide, how many you decide to run. But most insurance companies will cover a basic few. Call your insurance company first and tell them call the doctor's office, get the codes for the panels, then go call your insurance company and give them the codes and see what they cover. But typically what is usually covered for many insurances is what's called a complete metabolic panel, or a CMP. That checks some general measures of things, of metabolic functions that will be indicators of if anything's going wrong metabolically speaking. Your cardiovascular panel, it's typically going to be covered on almost everybody, and that's your total cholesterol count, the LDL, so the low density lipoprotein, the HDL, the high density lipoprotein, triglycerides, and those are that total cholesterol count balance that people talk about. Now there's less of a link of dietary intake of cholesterol associated with actual blood lipid cholesterol levels as new science has come out. So the dietary rules on cholesterol are actually totally changed, and your intake can be much higher than just 300 milligrams of cholesterol a day. So, however, I would still say be cautious and take your doctor's recommendations first. But if your total cholesterol count is still really high, just play it on the safe side and start looking at what's causing that, which it can be, we've talked about a little bit in the past, it could be inflammation that's causing that and some other things. But it's good to identify, that you have high cholesterol.
So you can move forward.
Yeah. Along with
are
that.
Are these all based in the same panel?
Those are all on cardiovascular, yeah. And you've got C-reactive protein and homocysteine on there. Hormone panel. This, depending on your age and your insurance coverage, these will probably cost you money, but it sometimes is not as much as you may think, but it'll cost you. Getting a testosterone, a total testosterone count, a free testosterone count, checking growth hormone, DHEAs, estradiol, SHBG. Those are all different hormones that will give you an idea of a bit larger impacts to what's going on metabolically. Now, if you're a young male and you're in your very early 20s or teenage years, you probably, they're not going to cover it, and you don't need to check your testosterone unless you've done something to your metabolism, like you were saying, Shane, about
anabolics,
about doing anabolic steroids. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, but I've always been curious because I like to. I'm a perfectionist, and I like information. I like to analyze and those kind of things. So when I've worked out, like each year that I've worked out, I've gotten new panels drawn to track my own personal progress and see if I've improved my metabolism or my hormones, and my testosterone has continued to increase as I've lived a healthier lifestyle and added more resistance training and proper diet in there and things like that, and my strength has increased. And I do that also to track my cortisol levels. Cortisol is another one that you should
is that part of this one as well? Under
the hormones, yeah. I mean, they're all separate. Like if you just say I want to run a hormone panel, they're not going to know what you're talking about. You got to actually tell them which specific one. So that's why I'm listing them. But it is, it's a hormone, so it's classified under that category. So yeah, I like to just get that checked just to see where I'm at. Just to as a preventative thing. Mm-hmm. Hormones will dramatically impact how you function, your mood, your body composition. As you have a lot of information on that. So that's why I recommend getting at least some of those, at least the ones that are covered or ones that you can also afford.
Right.
And that's how you find out. You just do a little homework and you get the codes from the clinic, and that's obviously in network, and call your insurance and see what they cover. And it's worth investing in, it maybe if not every year, every few years, so that you really can see what your health is looking like.
Makes sense.
It can tell you so much if you know how to interpret it. Mm-hmm. And if you get something checked and your doctor can discuss that with you, if there's something off.
Right.
I mean, if you invest a little bit of money and your panels come back and they're perfectly fine, that's awesome. that's good to know that you are in great normal health. Kudos, keep going.
Right.
I'm reading from my notes, and you're just like, No,
you got me interested. Like I said, I don't know enough about panels.
No, I've just learned
more
about
thoughts
it.
on it, but you're much more in depth in this than I ever will be.
Another group to consider would be some liver function that can, that can elicit a lot of things.
Liver's one of those things that if it's not running right, you're not going to live very long.
Yeah, you're not going to live very long. Yeah, I guess it has an appropriate name, doesn't it? Yeah. So I don't know nearly as much in this realm, so I'm not going to really purport to say that I do. But the tests you would want to run for that are alkaline phosphatase, GGT, SGOT, SGPT, and bilirubin. If I pronounce that right, I always never know if I do or not. But your doctor, just say if you forget those, just ask your doctor. I want to double check, make sure everything's functioning correctly. Can we run some liver tests to make sure my liver's functioning, kidneys, metabolic panel, cardiovascular panel, some hormones. Thyroid is an important one. That's also a hormone, but that's going to be your TSH, your T3, T4, and your RT3. And that's big for hyper and hypothyroidism. That can definitely impact mood. That can definitely impact weight gain.
Oh yeah, crazy big, both directions.
Yeah, and that's the thing when it comes to hormones is you have some genetic predisposition to a certain profile, but they're dramatically impacted by your environment, any external factors, food, environment, stress,
exercise,
life circumstance. Yep. So if you can identify if you've got anything weird going on with your body, or even if you're just doing this preventatively, get it checked out. See where you're at. I tend to know that I tend to be gravitate more towards hypothyroidism, but I'm technically in range. But I know that because of that might be a contributing factor to my emotional state.
On top of that, your hormones fluctuate huge as you get older anyway.
Yeah.
Especially certain things like testosterone, as we both talked about before, they start to decrease. And I think a lot of that has to do with external things as well because of our society.
It can, yeah.
I think our society pushes men to have lower levels of testosterone. Actually, studies have shown that.
In what way?
It will.
How do you mean it pushes them to depress their testosterone?
Their testosterone starts to decrease around the age of 30. A lot of that has to do with diet. A huge percentage have to do with diet. A big chunk of it has to do with exercise. But the reality is...
So you think it just, because of our cultural...
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Tendencies, it tends to be the result.
Yes.
Yeah.
So because of it, because if you go back, at least according to what I've read, and granted this to an extent is getting me anecdotal because I don't think they took many tests of them back in the day, they said testosterone was higher like at the turn of the 1900s as opposed to the way it is now. And the only thing that could bear on that is where our society is in certain details.
Interesting. I mean, yeah, it makes sense when we talk about tons of different components with food and
for sure.
Carcinogens and
yep.
Stress, our work mentality, like we mentioned in a couple past episodes,
right.
for sure, that can totally contribute to it. And I mean, so that that brings up a good point too. Of like we've talked about HRT, hormone replacement therapy. I think that should be a viable option for some people. But when you think about it, if you have low test or you have metabolic conditions and hormone fluctuations going on that may call for prescription use or medical treatments or HRT or something like that, you should look at your lifestyle first and say, you know what? Before I do these other medical related things, why don't I just change my lifestyle? Like maybe my job is running me into the ground, and though it provides, income source for me, like I need to look at other options. Or maybe I have a terrible diet and because I'm using that as a form of indulgence or hobby or emotional coping or something like that.
Right.
And now it's totally jacked up my hormone profiles and other aspects of my health. I should really reevaluate that and not just necessarily say, oh, you need to go on hormone replacement therapy or these other procedures or something like that. But I think that we should still have them.
Right. No, the only fear I've got is like with when they did hormone replacement for estrogen in women. That played out. And
you're saying for like pre, intra, and postmenopausal?
Yes, absolutely. And the problem is according to what I've read anyway, because I haven't studied this in depth enough to actually feel confident about my answer, but there was a lot of play on that was not good. They went down the wrong roads, and they showed signs, and that was actually the wrong direction to go. Mm-hmm. They haven't gotten there with men. They haven't gotten there with hormone replacement in the idea of testosterone. But that's still something I think people need to realize that, again, just like when I was talking about with using steroids and the stuff, is you got to rolling the dice to an extent because it's not a perfect science yet. That being said, do I believe that it's probably an intelligent move? Absolutely. Cognitive reactions alone in men as they lose testosterone levels, they start to think less clearly. They lose a lot of their capacity to think. It's not as dramatic in women with testosterone, obviously, but men, that's one of their key requirements to be able to even think straight. So do I think that it's probably a smart thing to do? Absolutely. I think that's... But again, I wanted to put out there that it's not a perfect science, and we're not at a point where, because it's so
and it's
fairly new.
It's relative to the individual situation too, because with any hormone, too much or too little can both be detrimental.
Absolutely.
So it's one of those things that has to be monitored really well, and that's where the human body is a great regulatory mechanism
for sure.
So if you can teach yourself how to manipulate that healthily through normal means versus having to do one of those therapies, you'll actually have better control over it.
Yep.
There are ways to naturally increase testosterone through food.
Oh yeah.
And training and things like that. There are ways to balance out cortisol levels and different things. So I think that people should use these panels as a way to keep track of their health.
Yep.
That's why I do it. Like, I don't need to go to a doctor for them to tell me I'm healthy.
Right.
I already know that. I'm pretty sure. I'm a fitness professional, and I eat very well for the most part. So I don't go to the doctor for them to say you're good. I go to the doctor to get the report, to look at the numbers, to see what am I trending. I mean, sure, I'm in range almost all the time for many things, but okay, what am I trending? Am I down 100 on my testosterone count from last year? Is my cortisol slightly higher? Is my I'm trying to think of another panel example. Did my cholesterol change dramatically over the last year?
Right.
I know I'm going to be in range, but it's going to tell me what's going on inside my body currently, or over the last 12 months. And it's just a good way to as a preventative health measure.
That makes sense. I mean, that's like I said. That's why I said the only thing I wanted on my side of this to share, because like I said, you're more versed obviously by far in this, is the idea that a lot of this isn't perfect sciences. The tests will give you ideas, and that's, I think, the preventative side of this is to watch how things are trending, because trending, I mean, from a business standpoint, trends are a big key to see where your business is actually going. And if you don't follow your trending in your business, the next thing you do is you find out that your trends are leading you the wrong direction. You end up closing your business because you didn't follow your trends.
Yeah,
you got to fix your trends. So if you're not following your trend in your hormonal aspects of your body, you're likely to go down the wrong roads. And I think that's the biggest reason why I side with this as heavily as I've changed over to side with it, is the fact that like you, I'm a creature of knowledge. I have to know why things are working and what causes it. And so this kind of stuff gives a lot of information on the behind the scenes stuff, and I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, I think one thing to note that's important though is, you'll go into your doctor's office, and there are some doctors that are more resistant to when you come in and ask for something versus you coming in and they telling you ought to do something. So just come at it from a very, this is a preventative thing. I know that I may not necessarily need these tests, but I want to learn about my health.
Right.
And but what they'll tell you is that they're inaccurate. They can be inaccurate, which is totally true. You come in at 8 a.m. one year, fasted. The next year you come in on a different day of the week. Maybe you didn't get enough sleep and you slept in, and you come in at 10 a.m. That's going to dramatically change some hormone levels.
That makes sense.
You know what I mean? So there's going to be fluctuations. So just try to be consistent. And like Shane said, look for trends when you're doing that. I just wanted to make sure that I said it, but I briefly went over getting checked for prediabetes and things like that, because that's such a big problem in our country and around the world, is getting your fasted glucose and fasted insulin checked, so that you can see what your carbohydrate tolerance is. Those tend to be signs that you're leaning the direction towards a type 2 diabetes development or prediabetes. So that's something you can totally catch early, and it is reversible if you catch it early enough.
Well, they've shown.
I've helped clients. I've helped a woman specifically, I can remember years ago, in her 60s, who was diagnosed pre-diabetic, and it was a difficult battle, because someone eats carbohydrates their whole life. It's very difficult for you to talk about how to properly, get the right amount and regulate carbohydrates, and using fiber and other things to help with that process. But once we did, we got everything reversed, and the doctor was like, "What are you doing?"
Oh no!
They were surprised that it was almost like any sign of it was almost completely gone. She looked completely normal on her panel.
That makes sense to me, because type 2 diabetes, just going on to a good exercise routine, they've shown studies that actually will back you out of type 2 diabetes once you've been actually diagnosed and are full blown in it.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely, you can catch it ahead of time. I mean, like I said beforehand, I didn't want to say that you couldn't, but the only thing is I just don't want to give people false hope they can't, because there's always a battle source. You have the capacity to battle, but I don't want them to be feeling like they did something really stupid because they got locked into something because they're living it. They have diabetes or whatever, and it's just something that.
Oh, you're saying people feel like once that happens, they're trapped?
Well, sometimes
what do
they
you mean
are.
exactly?
Sometimes they physically, their bodies just go down the road, and that's just where it is.
Yeah. Well, when you go too far, there's sometimes it's too late.
Right, and then not even necessarily that. I mean,
it's not too late to start doing something healthy. Well,
you can always
benefits,
do that. Right?
But there's a point of no return for developments of conditions.
Right, and part of what I'm saying is, let's. I don't want to use a specific, because I do have a specific example of this, but. They were eating right. They were doing all the right things. They ended up with diabetes. It happens anyway on occasion. It's not always completely stoppable. But you want to be on the road.
Well, yeah, and sometimes that's more of that genetic component that plays a factor
right.
too.
I wanted to play that into this.
But it's obvious. I mean, here's the thing. When we're talking on an epidemiological level, there, I got it. Type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, and childhood related type 2 diabetes has I can't remember for sure if it's either doubled or tripled, but it's one of the two. It's either doubled or tripled just in the last 30 years.
Oh, it's more than that.
Okay. We haven't even gone through a full life cycle for there to be any real genetic effect that would be that dramatic.
And I agree with that.
It's factorial from external factors like you've mentioned about
dietary
especially. and our dietary habits as a culture. And not just in the U.S., but it's apparent worldwide now.
Absolutely.
And so that's a major indicator of why it's preventative, because there's no way that this every person, or not every person, but a large chunk of people that are on the planet during the last 30 years all of a sudden elicited this predisposition towards diabetes in all these different age categories and things like that. It's been a matter of external factors.
I absolutely believe that. Like I said, though, I think that you're going to have cases where it happens. When you go back historically, specifically on diabetes, you start going back and you start looking at the timelines before. Like I said, I always go to the 1950s because it's really where a lot of this started to swing in a different direction. The pendulum started swinging the other way. But before the 1950s, diabetes was almost unheard of. They didn't even know how to treat it.
Yeah, well, because it wasn't. They thought it was an adult-only disease.
Well, not only did they think it was adult,
that children could even develop it.
It was rare in adults. Diabetes was so rare they didn't know how to treat it or deal with it at that point. My grandfather had it. Okay, so I have.
They referred to it as adult onset diabetes or pre-diabetes,
something like that. Yeah, but he had. I mean, he had to have insulin shots, all that back in the 1970s. So he had it for years. That being said, he was a rarity. Okay, back like I said in the 1970s, diabetes was almost unheard of even then. So when you talked about it, if you talked about it at school with your friends, nobody understood what diabetes was. It wasn't known about. Today, it's known about like crazy.
Oh yeah.
And so, do I think it's dealable with? I just want it to be known that there are people out there that are going to get it, even though they've done everything right.
Yeah, there's
but you want to try and fight it. You want to go out and get these
and even if it is, even if
you're
young right now, and God forbid you get it later on,
right?
And it's an inevitable thing that's going to happen. Still living a healthy lifestyle and eating well is only going to do good for that.
Absolutely true.
You still have to monitor. If you're type 1, it's a little different than type 2. But
just the nature of what insulin
there's
does.
some type 2s do become insulin dependent, or
most if they let it keep going down that road.
Well, yeah, if they don't do anything.
If they don't back away from it,
some things that you can do beforehand and
absolutely
preventative things. But it's you're like you had said, is it inevitable in some people? Yes. Are you a lost cause? No.
I don't think anybody's a lost cause in anything. Now, granted, type 1, because your body stops producing insulin, it's a different beast. But that being said, again, if you're more healthy, if you do certain things, if you take your blood panels and you do all this kind of stuff that you're talking about, all it's going to do is set you up with a knowledge base so that you can fix a lot of this, or at least work through it in a better way. And that's why, like I said, when you brought it up, I'm not as knowledgeable in this that I feel like I can sit down and tell exactly panels, because I couldn't. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't even feel good about it. I would have to point them off to somebody like yourself, because I would feel unethical talking about panels.
Yeah, like I said, I only know a little bit about a few of them, but I know that when you check these ones. Mm-hmm. That if you're outside of a normal range, there could be a factor.
Right.
That they could, even if they're not out of range, even if they're at a different end of the spectrum, it can be impacting certain factors of your health and or body composition, and so it's a good preventative thing to do for people. On a general level, I know that we should check these particular ones. There's tons of other things you can run. You can check your vitamin D levels. You can check your electrolyte levels. You can check so many other things. Mm-hmm. But on a general level, to say, okay, what are some of the big impactors of one's health? These are going to be some of those big ones.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me.
That if you see a flag, then or a trend a certain way with some of these, then it'll tell you a little bit about what's going on. It should
bring a flag up so you can actually, especially
it'll flag them. It'll say high or low when you're in or out of range, and then the doctor will discuss whether that's
what I was going to say,
a good or bad thing, or things that impacted that, sometimes it's not a big deal. Like, I'm consistently low on vitamin D3.
Right.
It's not a big deal.
Most people will be on vitamin D.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
It just means, I do some correct things. I get more sunlight. My vitamin D deficiency could not even be necessarily like any other factor other than I spend a lot of time inside.
Right.
Maybe if I spent, a good 20, 30 minutes, 40 minutes a day at least
you're right.
in the sun,
you're right.
Maybe my D levels wouldn't even be so bad that I would take supplementation.
Well, and your body will regulate better if you do that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
Since it's propagated by sunlight. So, yeah. Anyway,
that's kind of the majority of what I had, is just letting people know the importance of blood panels, what some of them do, and what are the ones to ask for to get run as preventative care.
Right.
And just like I said, before you get stuck with a big bill, make sure you go to someone that's in network and their lab is in network.
Well, and on top of that,
take the codes from the clinic and ask your insurance if they cover those
ahead
codes.
Of time.
Yeah,
for sure.
And then you'll be set.
It makes sense. Sweet.
Anything else?
No, dude. Like I said, this is your beast. I'll just follow along.
All right, guys. I hope that gave you some more information. We'll talk to you soon.
Peace.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Shane and I hope you learned something new and exciting today about your own health and fitness. Head over to metabolicradio.com. There you'll find our bios and our results-driven programs that are designed to help teach you everything you need to know when it comes to getting real permanent results. You can also sign up for our newsletter to get free weekly updates. To chat with Shane or I, just email us at taylor@metabolicradio.com or shane@metabolicradio.com. We would love to hear from you. You can also join the conversation on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com and search for Metabolic Radio Private Forum. There you can request to join the group. We would love to add you to the conversation and answer your questions on the show. And hey, if you like our podcast, please help us grow our community by leaving us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. We would really appreciate your help. Thanks again so much for all your support and your listenership. Now go out there and spread the good word of fitness.